Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's webinar. Today we have two companies on the webinar. We have Microart and we have Berlin KraftWorks. Before I introduce our panelists, all of which you can see on the screen here, I just wanted to go through a few housekeeping things. First of all, we'd love to have questions from you as we go. We're going to keep today's session quite informal, quite conversational, and explore the whole product life cycle and the very important link between design and manufacturing. So go ahead and ask questions whenever you feel the need. There's a Q&A tab or there's a chat window that you can use as well. By all means, say hi on the chat window if you know someone on the panel or you've got anything to say. Keep us informed. We are recording this webinar, so it will be available on demand after today's session. So don't worry too much about taking notes. And we'll also make sure everybody that is registered gets a copy of the two short slide decks that we have for presentation, as well as everybody's contact details. Mike, thank you for the first comment in the chat window. Always a bit of a star on these. Thank you very much for joining us. So let's start with some introductions. We have got Mark Wood and Charles Tonna here from Microart Services. Guys, thanks for joining us. We also have Peter Heuss and Matt Weller from Berlin KraftWorks. Thank you, you guys. Matt, perhaps I can start with you to give me a bit of an introduction to yourself and to Berlin KraftWorks, and then perhaps Peter can also follow with an introduction to himself.
Sure. Well, so for myself, Matt Weller, as Phil mentioned, I'm a supply chain guy, so APIX CPIM certified. My background is basically all things supply chain. I didn't spend my career in one specific area. I've done sourcing, I've done purchasing, I've done materials management, I've done logistics, I've done the whole gamut. It was quite fascinated by every aspect of it, and whether it's a blessing or a disease, I don't know, but it seems to be my interest, and I continue down that path. My focus tends to be on SMEs, small to medium enterprises. I really find a lot of value in working with companies of that size, and I seem to maybe differentiate from a lot of my colleagues in that my interest is also in what I would call lower volume, higher value goods. So when you get into those really lumpy, spiky demand patterns that are very hard to plan for and very tricky to manage, that's where I really seem to enjoy things. So yep. In a nutshell, that's me. Do we want to
why
go into Peter first?
Why don't we do the four introductions first, and then we'll look at the slide decks. Otherwise, everybody's waiting around a bit. Peter, perfect. The man in the lake.
Yeah, the man in the lake. Yes. So I'm the other half of Berlin KraftWorks. I'm a mechanical engineer, but I've done a lot of both mechanical and electrical engineering for a wide range of systems, some of them in automation equipment, material handling, a lot of production in food, in healthcare, health and beauty care, in pharmaceutical. I've done several startups now, some of them actually getting quite large, where I've taken products from concept through to production. And I've covered a lot of different industries in a pretty good career that's given me a lot of background into all the different little things that you have to think about when you're bringing a product to market. Mm-hmm. And I've spent a good bit of time in some startups that did rather well, and then went off and joined the University of Waterloo here in Kitchener-Waterloo to mentor startup companies, and I did that for a number of years. So part of my passion is helping the smaller companies take their ideas and actually figure out how to take them into production.
Yeah. It's always a bit of a joy working with startups, and there's kind of an energy and a passion, and it doesn't matter how old you get, you kind of get a buzz from that. And I know I've enjoyed that whenever I've had the opportunity. Charles, give me a bit of your background, then we'll talk to Mark, and then we can do a bit of an introduction to Microart.
Sure, great. Thanks, Phil. Yeah, Charles Tonna, born and raised in EMS or Canadian manufacturing. So always been near electronics and have loved it. Started in the supply chain, kind of echo Matt's experience. And supply chain is one of those things, you leave it for a bit and then you get pulled back in. So I tried to focus in on customer operations and, just a real attitude of getting to yes for our customers, and worked at the big guys, the medium guys, the small guys, and super proud to have found Microart as the hopefully the last home. And working with startups is a joy because you get to say yes so often, and you get to problem solve. There's challenges every day in EMS, and then there's more challenges when you're starting with startups. Design is complex and supply chain is tricky, but a figure it out attitude, which is what we really embrace at Microart, helps bring it all together. And thank you for having us today. It should be a good session.
No, looking forward to it very much. And Charles, I love the idea of someone actually being birthed in the EMS facility. I'm not sure whether that would be goods inwards or where it would be, but it's certainly an interesting image. Mark, give me a little bit about your background. Obviously, you started racing cars by the looks of it.
Yes, no. So I'm the CEO here at Microart. I've been with Microart now, I guess, 17 years. But my career started out actually as a PCB designer. And then I progressed from PCB design into actually I worked at a bare board shop, and then into assembly. So I've seen the whole gamut from start to finish, and just trying to help now startups and medium-sized companies and some fairly large companies just continue on with production. There's as you know, there's a lot of challenges right now. So it's becoming a real struggle for some companies. Some companies seem to be getting through this crisis pretty well. Other ones not so well. So we're just here to help.
Yeah, and that's the attitude you need to take, because every case is unique, and we'll come to that. And I want to talk to both of the supply chain guys, Charles and Matt, about the current challenges. But first of all, Charles, give us a quick introduction to Microart and just run me through those half a dozen slides you've got.
And everyone will get a copy of this slide deck afterwards. Like Phil said, today's session is being recorded and the content will be available. But as we jump into this real quickly, you got a quick introduction from Mark and I, and we're happy to be here today. So a real quick summary of Microart and the numbers. We've been around for 40 years, starting in the bottom right there, and we're celebrating our 40th anniversary this year. So more news to come on that, and Phil's helping us with a few other things to celebrate some of our history. But jumping up into the top left corner, we now have 3 facilities. This week, we've officially moved into our second facility that is primarily a box build facility. But kitty corner on our city block here in Markham, Ontario, we have a 42,000 square foot facility that's primarily focused on automation and PCBA. And then a secondary location at 40,000 square feet that is now our global headquarters, purchasing, finance, and IT, along with box build and warehousing is what's facilitated in this office. And then we have a satellite location in Buffalo, New York for that famous Made in USA sticker and requirement to service many of our customers. We have 8,000 square feet there. In the 2-3 locations, we're happy to say we have 12 SMT lines. We believe a company our size, servicing the amount of customers that we service, we really need this amount of flexibility. And that comes from having 12 different SMT lines. We utilize Samsung across all of our lines. There are 9 in Markham, 5 high speed, 1 brand new. And then we have 3 SMT lines in Buffalo, really set up for rapid turnaround time. We're up to 300 employees across the 3 different sites. We work 3 shifts, 6 days a week. On a monthly basis, we're shipping about 1,000 products each month. And, some of these products, they're an inch by an inch. And other products are 750 pounds. So go on 2 pallets to get out the door. And it's super exciting every day. And to tap into 40 years of experience is wonderful. Our founder is still part of our business. I think our average tenure is greater than 10 years. So to have that experience in our building is wonderful. Oh, I guess I have to hit the next slide.
You do, yeah.
Yeah. So like many in our space, we have what we call the table stakes, but in the EMS industry, our attitudes and our values is what differentiates us. But along the left here, we have our standards, anywhere from PCBA layout to full direct order fulfillment to our customers is the spectrum we can cover. We have inline AOI on every SMT line. Got all the major PCBA processes in-house. We're super flexible in our scheduling window with those 9 to 12 SMT lines. Regularly, we'll do a 24-hour turn. We actually have one of our lines on standby. It probably runs once or twice a month for a 24-hour rapid prototype. And, we're happy to have that flexibility under our roof. We're part of IPC. We've got several of the different certifications from aerospace to military to medical, IPC, and so on. But most people have probably scanned the slide already. But any questions on this kind of stuff, we'd be happy to dig into further. Microart, it's been a story of growth, and it's fun to work alongside Mark. Excellent energy. Just he has a Henry Ford favorite quote. I don't know if he wants to spit it out now or later, but what is it, Mark? If you're not growing, you're dying. Yeah, exactly. Wow, what a slide. As a guy, talking to customers every day and talking about growth. People want to be around growth, and what a great curve. And we're committed to it. So most of our budget for this coming year is all about investing in growth, infrastructure, systems, and tools. But you can see a little bit of a roadmap here. Just last year, we crossed the $40 million mark, and looking for that, repeat double-digit year-over-year growth. So a little bit of our history there in the buckets. Just 10 years ago, we were only 20,000 square feet with 90 employees. So an excellent journey to be on. And now we're sitting here looking at robotics and looking at AOI back-end testing and this nice growth of employees. So it's a fun place to be around. Some of the advantages of Ontario or of Microart, some of our philosophies, we no temporary employees, everyone's part of the family. We're committed to our people, and our people are committed to us. In Canada, we're protected by a lot of these tariffs. The weakness of our dollar against the US dollar is always an advantage. Now this global purchasing footprint that we have, feet on the street in the low cost regions, a pretty broad team. We have 15 purchasing people, or customer service reps, as we call them here. And we've got a very big global reach there, which is a great assistance to our customers. We're proud to say, we live in Ontario and we do get a lot of snow, but we haven't closed for a snow day in our history. And I think that's wonderful. If it's not safe, we don't want our people to work, but a lot of our people, if it's not safe, we don't want our people, driving through really miserable conditions, but a lot of people are very close, and it's just one of those things that we're pretty proud of. Ontario is wonderful with the power grid, even though in our pre-call we were talking about the thunderstorms that are outside. We don't want the power to go out, but rarely does that happen, for more than a few minutes, and it doesn't disrupt our lines and that sort of thing. And no extended factory closings. We really close for 2 days a year, the Christmas, the New Year's, and keep our operations running to support the number of customers that we do have. Our uniqueness, some of the things that are different about Microart are our values, selling points. Each one of our customers gets a dedicated customer service rep, and that customer service rep is responsible for that customer from quote to square production kit. And there's none of this back and forth that where was this part quoted when a customer does give you an order. So we're very, very quick to react and jump on top of customer sales orders. It's not transferring knowledge or transferring to a different department. Once that production kit is squared up, it then moves to a dedicated project manager. And your project manager is responsible for taking the square kit, running it through the process steps, starting at SMT or wherever it starts, through to shipping out to our customer. That's something that gets highlighted every time we do our customer sat surveys. And that service, we measure repeat customer orders and repeat jobs, and we're north of 80%. So we're pretty proud of that. And we really want to be known as those guys that, you can come have beer and wings with us, shoot the shit and get stuff done. And, it's transparent. There's nothing to hide. Transparent pricing. We don't have minimums. Last year, smallest customer, sub $500, a few prototypes. Largest customer, 3 million type of deal. So, we've figured out a way to work a model and a system to service those needs. It's again, I'll say one last time, it's fun to be around.
Yeah.
With our medical certifications, we have a fully traceable supply chain. In today's markets, that's becoming very important. Knowing the source of where materials are coming from. We live for quick turn prototypes. Again, that SMT line that's on standby to support the 24-hour turn. And really the values we want to be living every day is this grit. We want to be on the sports field, almost clawing our way across the finish line to figure it out, being very respectful, open, and honest. And it's how we want to behave every day with all of our partners, whether it's on the supply side or the customer side. Our tagline, we get it done, we get it right. And we're going to bend over backwards until that's happened. It's not that we don't make mistakes, but when we do, we fix them. And take that learning to the next job. So I think the last slide here is just, our contact
details.
And
and I think some of the things that stand out to me is that 82% repeat business, Charles, and that's because of that can-do attitude and that gritty attitude, and that's important. And the speed at which stuff gets out of the door and having that dedicated line for prototypes is really important, and we'll come on to that when we talk a little bit about the design. Matt, perhaps you can give us the 5-minute tour of Berlin KraftWorks and how that came into being.
So, Berlin KraftWorks, well, we are an engineering company. I'm just going to get this to move forward here. Basically, our focuses are on design, education, and optimization. So we like to differentiate ourselves, I would say, from a traditional engineering firm. People will think of engineering services in terms of, I have a design, I have an idea, go figure out how to draw it, go figure out how to model it, give it back to me when you're done. And we stray away from that. I should back up just a little bit and give some background to that. Peter alluded in his introduction to his time working with University of Waterloo's Velocity Garage. He spent a lot of time there working with startup companies and watching them trying to get their products through to market and trying to understand what support was out there for them to do it. And at the same time he was doing that, I was working for a company at the time that was known as Arion Labs. That's since they've grown and they've been acquired by Fleer, and they've done very well. But I was in the supply chain role there, and I was responsible to take a company that basically had no supply chain and develop it up to the point where it could support an investment, which we did. But I had a similar experience to Peter, which was we couldn't find any really good resources either on the supply chain side, and he couldn't see any on the sort of the how do you go to manufacture side. And we had a successful story. Peter could probably tell some that he saw that were not so successful because there wasn't any kind of real support available. And certainly any sort of support that we could find more or less was focused on the idea that you already knew what you were doing. You just simply needed help to get there. So you already knew you needed a product. You just simply needed someone to design it for you. You didn't figure out how to start you from zero. So we went through and we decided we needed to put something together to sort of respond to that. And that's when Berlin KraftWorks was born. And no, we're not a craft brewery, although we do know how to make beer. But the name harkens to Kitchener. We're based in Kitchener-Waterloo. Kitchener was once known as Berlin, Ontario, prior to World War I. And we have a very, very rich manufacturing heritage here. And part of the mark of pride from products that came from this area is they did have a stamp on them which said made in Berlin, which was a mark of quality. And it was a well-known mark of quality. And we sort of pay homage to that heritage that we have here. Part of our mantra is, manufacturing's not dead. It's far from dead. It's far from dead in Canada. It's far from dead in Ontario. There's a lot going on here. So our engineering services, well, they include, you can probably read the slide here. So product and functional specification development, mechanical and electrical design, design for manufacture, test, supply chain, and service. That's kind of an important one. I find that gets skipped a lot. People generally understand design for manufacture. Some people understand design for test, although very often test will often be like an afterthought. What do you mean I might need to certify this? What do you mean I might need to validate how it functions? Design for supply chain is something I find is often overlooked, sometimes entirely, but it's very important in the development process. And design for service is another one. I'm sure there are people listening to this who may have their own service horror stories, or could certainly relate to some. And there are definitely ways that you can head that off before they happen in a lot of cases. We help with production processes, revision change management, development of requirements for tests and certification, packaging and quality control. Production processes, and that can mean a couple of things. It can actually be in terms of, how you're physically doing production within your abilities. So sometimes people will ask us to come in and help them figure out, come and look at my assembly line. How am I putting this together? So like a manufacturing engineering type of analysis. But it can also be, understanding actual processes in terms of technologies available to produce those parts, right? So, is this design utilizing the appropriate technology in its build to make it, cost competitive, for example. So on the operations side, and this is a lot of the part that I head up, but before I get too far into it, I will actually say that you can't get too far into operations without considering the engineering as well, because anyone who's ever been through any kind of an operations optimization process will know that you can get some mileage, you can get so far, but eventually you're going to hit up on things that are going to be dependent on the product that you're producing itself, where unless you're able to change those elements of that product, you can't really go any farther, right? It is what it is. Combining supply chain and engineering, in our case, allows us to go farther. So if we find that, hey, look, you have an opportunity, for example, in your production to really optimize here, you can save yourself a bundle of time and cost. but you need to change some of these properties of the product. Well, we are certified in engineering to do mechanical design, electrical design, so that we can actually do what may need to be done to that product in line with how we're optimizing the operations, in one shot sort of thing, and get the most value out of it. So I'll go a little further into this. So, project management and planning, sourcing, supplier qualification and management, that's actually a lot of one. And a lot of early stage companies really struggle with the sourcing aspect of it. It can be very difficult if you're an early stage company just trying to get the attention of a supplier. We deal a lot with that. Logistics strategy development, operations process development, value stream mapping. I'll pause a bit on there. If people are not familiar with value stream mapping, feel free to reach out to me. We didn't invent it, but it's a very powerful process. It's something I recommend for anybody, regardless of what their background or regardless of what their company is producing. Process design, implementation, and management, and continuous improvement. So education. One of the other things that sets us apart is we don't like to take things away behind the curtain and then bring them back when they're done and say, there you go, here's the bill. We believe very firmly that our customers' products are their products, and they must retain ownership of the product, ownership of the design. With that ownership, they also have to have responsibility in the design. So as we go along, when we're working with them, there's going to be questions, we'd like it to be this way. Can it be this way? Does it need to be that way? What's the implications of this decision, of that decision? What's the cost of this decision, of that decision? We include our customers in every step of the way on those decisions because we believe firmly that they need that knowledge as part of the product development. So we believe if we go away and develop something and bring it back, there you go, we've actually robbed them of significant value because, to some degree, you can look at a physical product and try to understand how it's put together. And some people can sort of look at that and reverse engineer it or whatever else. But what they can't necessarily understand is all the decision points that went into it in the first place. And we really believe that's where a lot of competitive advantage comes from when trying to understand how to produce those products. And that knowledge needs to stay with our clients. It's not something we should take away or keep for ourselves. So we accelerate ideas and mitigate risk by putting our experience to work. So, we have a team, it's Peter and myself, and we have a team of other professional engineers and supply chain people who love what they do, passionate about what they do, have years of experience at what they do, and they're not afraid to get their hands dirty. So we're not the kind of people where we sit back and say, you should do this and that and this and that, and good luck with it, and let us know how it works out. We will absolutely get involved, and in many cases we work as an extension of our clients' teams. So in an early stage company, it could be, I can think of one example where we have a company that they just don't understand certain aspects, so they come to us for advice, but then they have actual skill sets that they don't have. And in one case I can think of in the purchasing and in the logistics side, they have skill sets that are missing. So we are actually acting, I guess it would be, we could use the term fractional if you want to understand that. Do fractional services for them to actually do the purchasing and the logistics for them, but we'll set up a database for them so that all their data is theirs. They keep it. They can see what's going on all the time. It's transparent to them. And there's no, they're not dependent on us for that information. That's a temporary solution. That can happen with mature companies as well. It's not just small companies. If you have a larger company that is decided that it wants to do a product development and it's not in the habit of doing product developments all the time, it can be a lot of cost and expense to go out and hire a development team, to go out and hire engineers and supply chain people focused on this, especially if you're you're not doing this all the time. Then you got to consider what you're going to do with these people once you've hired them and the project's done. So we help out in those ways as well. Okay. So how are we going to work with Microart services? Well, we both realize there is a lack of resources and preparedness for physical manufacturing. So we've seen it. I gave that story earlier in this little slide deck. I'm sure Microart will talk about it more as we go, but you know, there's all sorts of examples of companies out there that have a really good idea, a fascinating idea, something that definitely could be produced, and they don't really know what to do, and they're just kind of throwing it over the wall at a contract manufacturer, and then the contract manufacturer is not necessarily in a position to be able to do much with it either, depending who they are and how they're equipped. What we intend to do is to help to alleviate that. So Microart knows how to produce boards all day long. They understand production, they understand manufacturing. What we can do, though, is we can work with clients to help them with all the other aspects of that in terms of getting ready to produce. How do you know it's ready to produce? How are you going to set up your supply chain and component selection? How are you going to manage your risks involved in that? What's your volume going to look like? Where do you intend to ship it? Are you going to run into any shipping regulations before you get there? And start to figure out all these things that you kind of need to understand before you start producing at all. We kind of need to understand in the design phase, help those clients to understand those pieces of it so that when they are producing boards, it's so much smoother and faster and less, I will say, less churn and confusion for the clients, right? Because there's less of the, oh, we didn't think of this, now we need to change that. It can happen a lot. So basically, this would be more direct focused, and I would say customized attention to these clients as they need them to their specific situation and their specific products. That with a view that we know that Microart is going to be doing production, so we can help them set up for that. At the same point in time, we can help Microart to understand the scope of the product better and everything else that they need to do in order to make it successful. So the last slide here is basically just the contact slide. Contact details. You know, we can see on the recording. You know, I guess the last statistic is snow days. Yeah, we've never had a snow day either. We work remotely. We have worked remotely this whole time. I've got customers presently as far west as Regina and as far east as Halifax, and in places in between. And I guess that's the wonderful thing with the virtual world. Although sooner or later, you do have to go face to face. So we do make visits out and we do travel to where we need to be. But what we can do remotely, we do remotely. And so no, the snow does not stop us.
No, and it's fascinating to see what does and doesn't stop us. One of the things that we've learned, and I've been very taken with that from Microart, is you just, as Charles says, you get shit done. You can't travel, you still get shit done. You can't get components, you still get shit done. So, and I want to talk to Charles and Matt about component shortages. But first of all, I wanted to bring Mark and Peter in and talk a little bit about the way this relationship came about. From your point of view, Mark, was this relationship with a design house something you were looking for? How did you guys bump into each other and decide that this was a marriage made in heaven?
Well, I guess for us, I've known Matt and Peter for quite some time, but you wouldn't believe how many customers come to us with a product that really is not ready for manufacturing.
Yeah,
it's a board that's been cobbled together. It's a proof of concept. And even at the proof of concept level, a lot of customers believe that is good to go. And it's kind of a shock to them when you tell them that it's not, and that they might not even be able to get some of the parts that they've cobbled onto these boards. So they really need that intermediary step to focus on getting it ready for production. And there is nobody out there doing that. There's lots of engineering firms that offer engineering, but they don't offer what Matt and Peter offer. And for us, that was critical.
Yeah, no, I completely understand that. And Peter, from your point of view, how important is it for you to be able to almost take a product that you're designing to a factory and see how it's going to be made, or even take a customer to the factory and say, look, this is how stuff fits together, and this is why we're designing it in this particular way?
It's absolutely beyond critical. Every company has different experiences, different tooling, different equipment, different processes. When you're building a product, and I don't care if it's a screw or a car or a spaceship, you're going to build the parts according to how many you build, and that's going to change what equipment you use and what tooling you use. And every company is going to have their own equipment and tooling, and make the parts in their own way, and it might differ, and the differences might be minor. But if you don't account for that in your design, you're going to have problems. And to have an understanding of how it's going to be made, when it's going to be made, and what kind of volumes, and what kind of process and tooling and equipment is critical to getting the design right and avoiding problems as you go along. I will take customers to multiple vendors to show them the different possibilities, and show them that you will actually need perhaps to have multiple designs of the same thing if you're getting that same part made by different people. And I think that's part that gets missed by a lot of companies. So having a relationship with somebody like Microart that does allow sort of the open arms concept, and where we can go in and explain the process and walk the process with the customer and say, this is why you have to change it. These are the benefits and the detriments of what we're looking at. That's invaluable.
Yeah. And having that feedback loop, and actually be able to have Mark and Charles say, hey, if you were designing in this particular direction, or we've got this new system, or we've got this new process, that's going to have a big impact. Matt, you talked about design for manufacture, which sometimes I think is such a broad topic. It encompasses so many things. And you think about design for supply chain, design for test, design for specific processes. One of the terms that I've been hearing recently, and partly because I've been saying it quite a lot, is this idea of design for disruption. And we're in this world where we're getting constant disruptions. Everybody talks about the pandemic, but before the pandemic, it was the trade war. After the pandemic, it's the component shortage issues. I'm guessing you and Charles have both been living component shortage issues recently, and that has an impact on design. How do you try and build that into the DNA of a design, so when something is disrupted, you can deal with it? Matt, maybe you can take that one first, and then we'll talk to Charles.
Yeah, sure. Well, I mean, the first thing is, if you're got a very good design specification, you're looking at things from the functionality that whatever the product's got to do, and you start making your choices based on that. And supply chain's got to get involved early, because it's how do I say, there's a temptation in the early stages to make choices based on convenience, right? I went to this popular website and I found that product, so that solves a problem. That solves a technical problem. Let's throw that in there, and then it stays buried in there until you get time for production, and it's like, nope, I can't get this thing anywhere. Or they discontinued it 2 months ago, so it's, you either got to buy a lifetime buy or forget it, or something, right? You've got to start to consider those things early. So you're right, there's a lot of, I will say, extrinsic factors that you can't control, like a pandemic, for example.
Mm.
But there's a lot of factors that you can control. So where are you going to get your products from? And why are you going to get them from those sources? You know, who are your sources? How reliable are them? How well do you know them? If this is not your first time developing a product, then you should theoretically have a supply base that you have information on, and you can say, these are my good suppliers, these are my bad suppliers. Let's start getting strategic about where we're getting them from. If it is your first go around, then you have to do your diligence on kind of everybody that you're working with. That has to be balanced with the value of what that exercise is. If I'm sure we'll talk about this later, if you're getting into a proof of concept, for example, you're just trying to cobble something together loosely to develop your tech to prove a concept of what you're doing, maybe you're not going to spend so much time on understanding the sources of those parts because it's just representative. Now, if you're building a prototype that you intend to produce, now you absolutely are going to spend time on that, because it's amazing what carries through from that first napkin sketch, what actually will carry through into production. And if it's not vetted early on, it can become more and more expensive. So evaluating risk, and we've heard so much about risk management over the past months now, and what does that even mean? I heard one person say there's no such thing as risk management. You can't manage risk, you can only respond to it. So there is some truth to that. So I think another aspect to that in light of that is agility, right? Don't box yourself in so tight in a design or in a component where it's it's absolutely got to be this or nothing. You'd better be so sure that your reasons for doing that are absolutely crucial before you do that, because as soon as you do that, you're just at the mercy from whatever might come your way in the tide. So yeah.
Charles, over the recent weeks, you've been pulling your hair out with respect to it's all gone. With respect to component issues, how many times have you wished you could time travel back to the design and make some changes to build in a bit more flexibility, a bit more agility, a bit more risk management or risk mitigation?
Yeah, we definitely become broken records, through my whole career, really. You got a dual source. And when you're bleeding edge, that's really hard. So then you need an inventory plan, and that's really hard. So you need a flexible partner, whether it's distribution, manufacturer, or contract manufacturer. You need someone that's going to work together, being open and do the right thing. We've Phil, you and I started talking about this, I think 3 months into the pandemic, and we wrote a little article. We looked at our single source components and talked to customers about inventory, and that's a reaction to risk. That wouldn't have had to happen if in the earlier stages we were doing that and going, let's get some alternates identified now and be monitoring stock position on critical components. And there's more and more systems and tools to help us with that. Once this supply chain blockchain get figured out, hopefully that will help the OEM, our customers, and help our inventory. But till then, I think it's that just creative thinking that where there is risk, what's the mitigation? Because there are solutions, and we've amped up our inventory well over 20% to support our customers. And we're private and we're able to do that. We're not having to answer to some market to say, we're getting 12 inventory turns or 7 inventory turns. We can define that for our partners. But I'll go back. It's that dual source. And
multiple source where you can.
That's right. Yeah.
And it might be worth mentioning on there too. So, and we seem to be talking about this about components, but another aspect of that as well is, services that you get involved in the manufacturer. So, Charles, you'll get into it. I'm sure you will. You do box builds, right? So you put together a PCBA, but they're also furnishing an enclosure of some sort, right? It could be a metal enclosure or plastics, injected molded plastics or whatever, but where do they come from? And especially in the development phase, there's so much value in developing it with local partners.
Yeah.
That helps with the risk so much. So, you know, I've got some clients where their development, the pandemic hit, and their development just ground to a halt. And the ones that were using local sources, you know, they might have had higher unit prices. They just carried on.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, what did it cost them in the long run? Well, it cost them a lot less than it looked on paper. So, you know, a good part of your strategy is don't get hung up on your unit costs. You need to start to look at the all-in costs. That's actually a really good way to try and understand what your actual risk is and steer clear of some pitfalls. There's a lot of tempting fruit out there that it's temporary at best. So
yeah. Mark, from a point of view of a CEO that's also comes from a design background, this must really resonate with you. I know when I started my career in PCB design, we didn't really think very much about this stuff. You know, you had a kind of a list of components. They came from, you know, radio spares or various different sources back then, and that was what you had. It's very different now. It makes it important for you as a leader to understand that design process when you're looking at the way you're putting all your systems and processes together.
It's extremely difficult now. It was totally different back 20, 30 years ago. There's just so many unique components now out there. It's very difficult. The engineers, they need a specific purpose, so they need a specific IC. That IC is only made by one company. You know, back in the day, you had TI, National, onsemi, all making the same parts. So if you couldn't get the TI part, you could get the National part, or you get the onsemi part. Whatever you needed, you could get. Now, it's a unique IC from some manufacturer, God knows where, and you can't get it, and it becomes, as we call it, the golden screw. Yeah. And you can get 99 of the parts, and you can't get that one part, and there is no sub. So it makes it very difficult, and it's harder on the supply chain people because it's their job to bring in all the parts together. Well, what we're having to do now in a lot of cases is bring in those 99 on the hope that we will get that one. And again, as Charles had mentioned, it drives our inventory through the roof, but it's the only way to protect our customers.
Yeah, and it's interesting the last year how we've moved from just in time to just in case, and that's become a big
time's gone out the window
in the supply chain. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Peter, I wanted to kind of meander a little bit through the journey that an innovator goes on as they go through this. And I know that whole proof of concept and prototype and the difference between them is important. And I want to, for you to kind of explain that a little bit. But I also want to, we have all these things that we can get hung up on as an innovator, as a designer when we're developing a product. And I want to explore how you encourage that innovative creativity whilst keeping people grounded and practical. You don't want to just say, you can't do this, you can't do that. You don't want to be the fire hose. How do you do that?
Sometimes not well. I have to admit, some of the companies I've worked with, they've been very enthusiastic and trying to make sure that they don't fall into some pitfalls. It's been challenging. I tend to be enough of an engineering geek that I get just as excited about their ideas as they do. So that helps me. I get in and I'll work with details and help them do some of the conceptual design, and that's just the kind of geek I am. So that helps. That helps a lot. And I actually came to design pretty late in my career. I kind of did it backwards. I did a lot of project management and a lot of large scale engineering first, and then came to the production side, and then to the design side afterwards. Kind of backwards to a lot of people's careers. It gave me a lot of background into how you approach design from the other side. So I'm still excited about design and how you might pick from your myriad of different ways to look at a problem. So I get involved with the concept with them. But I am a big one for wanting to teach on what the ramifications are to the different designs. So it's fine to do the duct tape and breadboard design and slap it in a cardboard box and prove that that you just built a transporter. But at the end of the day, to say, yeah, now we have to take this and we're going to have to look at how to build it and make that a teaching exercise. That works rather well, especially with the younger startups that we tend to deal with a lot in this region. Keep them excited about not just the concept, but how to deliver the concept.
Yeah.
A little bit, maybe a little bit too heavy on the philosophy, but
no, absolutely important. And just so I understand that difference between proof of concept, that's the breadboard in the cardboard box. That's the Back to the Future DeLorean that travels in time, and then the prototype is the actual DeLorean. I guess never felt like a production car to me. Always felt much more like a prototype.
Yeah, I feel that prototype is one of the more misused words out there right now, and everybody says that anything they tinker together is a prototype. I like to differentiate it and say the prototype is the last version that you build before you go into production. It is the design that you base production on. So as you get a proof of concept and you cobble it together the best you can, prove you have a product, prove that there's a market for it, that you can sell it, that it's a viable business. That part's all really, really important. But then take that proof of concept and build towards a prototype, which includes all the things like DFM and DFT, which we like to call DFX, because X is just one of very many things that we have to consider and make that a teaching exercise. And that prototype then is the last thing you build to say, this is what we can take to production.
Yeah. And Mark, is that prototype what a lot of people come to you with, or do they quite often come to you with the cardboard box full of parts and ask you to make that?
We see lots of cardboard boxes. And to be honest, they expected that they can go into production with the cardboard box.
Yeah.
One of my favorites is you still get a lot of customers coming in with on their bill of material, and it has AliExpress as the supplier.
Yeah.
So they have no idea where that part is coming from, and the traceability, anything. Yeah, it's kind of scary.
Yeah. And I guess, Matt, that's where you have to build the discipline into the process, and you have to start to go through all those individual stages. You're going through all the individual stages that Peter talked about in terms of making sure all the engineering's right, but you're also designing out the supply chain at that point.
You start designing a supply chain right away from day one. And, I try to put up bans on, I would say, AliExpress. I shouldn't mention names. There's another website that's very popular that some people refer to it as the jungle website, because there's a jungle that has a similar name to it. These are not sources.
Yeah.
And when you get products from these sources, you have no idea where they're coming from. You don't even know if they are what you think you're getting, right?
Yeah.
And so someone would say, well, why, who cares? I just needed to do what I need to do. Well, you care, because when you go into production, unit number 1 and unit number 10,000 had better be the same as each other. You can't have 100 different variants of what you're building, because every damn one's got something different about this component that's inside.
Yeah.
It also costs you a fortune, because Mark made the example. He's smiling because he knows it. He made the example before about you get a specific IC. Well, that specific IC isn't a problem, except for the fact that the board it's going into has probably been engineered around that specific component and its properties. So if you go put something else in, it's not going to work. So you'll stop quick if you have no consistency in your parts.
We can take that a step further. If your product that you're buying off of some East Asian website says it's the same, but the next batch is slightly different, having a mounting hole in a slightly different location can bring your production to a halt.
Yeah.
One screw can absolutely stop you, and that's a sad day when you discover that.
So how much attention and concern are you going to give to that? Well, ultimately, it's got to be driven by the business case at the top, and everything underneath supporting that has the focus back up to it and support it, right? So if I'm cobbling together a proof of concepts, I might not be as concerned about that, but I'm still going to ask those questions. And I've seen people cobble together proof of concepts, and I'll see them on, AliExpress of, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Well, I need it. Well, don't get it there.
Yeah.
Ask me. I'll point you to some real sources where you at least have some consistency of what you have, because it's amazing what gets born in an early idea that does stick around all the way through, and then it becomes a problem.
Yeah. Yeah. Mistakes made early can be expensive and can last a long time.
Well, they have a compounding effect too, because follow-on
Yeah.
decisions, you learn to accept that one parameter, and then your decisions around it are almost enshrining it after a while, and it compounds and compounds. So
yeah. I wanted to ask Mark and Charles, from a point of view of Microart and from a point of view of the manufacturing, sure, this relationship's changed over the decades, hasn't it? When you look at the original EMS kind of box build, it was here's a box of parts, here's a PCBA, go build it. Now you're into a much more collaborative relationship. Talk to me a little bit about that, but also about the importance of proximity in that. And I think we're seeing this trend of rethinking some of this globalization and a bit of reshoring going on. How is the design relationship and the relationship, or the much deeper partnership you have with your customers, encouraging that to happen? I don't know, Mark or Charles, who would like to take that one?
Charles, you take that one because you have more experience with the working with the offshore.
Sure. Yeah. Well, the first, the first thing I'll latch on to is, we've been super blessed in the box build manufacturing. Most of our growth is coming there. We're really listening to our customers. We listen for the pain point, and the pain point is, I got to get this thing boxed. And whether it's in plastic or metal, it doesn't really matter. Our expansion to this second footprint is really all about box build. And when we did this at the start of the pandemic, I thought my job would be on the line because I signed a lease. Well, thank goodness I did, because now we had this 25,000 square feet of box build space that is now more than half full already. So we thank our customers for trusting us with the box build. When you look at the labor dollar, the mechanical labor in the full revenue dollar is actually quite small. It's in that 15% range. So you got to look at that as going, okay, you're going to save $7, $8 on every $100 you spend offshore. But having the partners that can look at this and start to go, okay, I don't have to travel, and I get a factory. We're actually branding that. You'll see soon yourfactory.com as our customer portal. Our factory is our customer's factory. We don't build products for us. We build products for our customers. So the closer we can get to our customer and just go, come on in, work beside us, work with us. Don't. This is your factory. Talk to us as if we're your production team. Don't hide anything. Has been the value. And I think, I've got this favorite book by Patrick Lencioni called Getting Naked. That's really all we did. Get transparent, and the customers will love you.
We'll respect you for it. Yeah.
And I had a great meeting with a customer today where it's like, you're helping me build the product, and we're both late, but this is how we're recovering. And it's like, oh, it's so nice just to have, the factory right here. So they're here working beside us, and we'll meet the end customer's goals.
You're going to have to be careful with the hook, line of we get naked with our customers. I think, you know, you might run into some challenges there. But how interesting is it to have this vision of you at the factory, you know, working on the line with your customers, and Matt or Peter from Berlin KraftWorks there alongside the innovator making it happen. Is that the dream? Is that where this is all going, Peter?
Oh, I would dearly love if it could be, because that's the only way to really ensure success on a product. And we love to work hands-on, so it'd be great for the customer and it'd be fun for us.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's that integration end to end. We are almost at the top of the hour. I can't believe how quickly that hour's gone. I feel like we could do another one, so we might have to break into future episodes to get into this a bit more, because I want to go into a bit more detail on the various different parts of the whole innovation journey further down the line. What we will do is we'll send out updates to the people that have registered and follow up on that. But in the meantime, guys, thank you so much for your time today. I've really enjoyed the session. I think I think we've learned a lot about that design process, but I'm sure there's going to be a lot more questions. So hopefully there'll be some follow up on that. But Charles, Matt, Mark, Peter, thanks for taking part. Peter, get off to that lake and get in your canoe and enjoy that. And Mark, you can get in that car and be careful in the snow with that one. Okay, guys, stay safe. Thanks so much for your time, and we'll look forward to talking again soon. Thank you.